increase our alert levels, and by that I mean having stringent measures at points of entry, but also importantly looking at the whole genome sequencing to detect the presence of Omicron virus, particularly from among returnees from abroad or returnees from the southern African countries. I would go to say that we should not be looking for Omicron only in countries that have confirmed the virus for now, because there are many countries that the virus may be there, the variant may be there, but have no capacity for sequencing. So any returning overseas Filipinos or foreigners coming in who test positive, I think we need to do whole genome sequencing now. And what is important from a genome sequencing perspective is because of the recent detection of the variant, we need to rapidly do genome sequencing of the most recent arrivals. There is a tendency and a delay in the Philippines to be sequencing samples that are 4 to 6 weeks collected earlier. Right now, I think the importance is to focus on those samples of people who detected positive at points of entry or recent arrivals during the last 10 days or 2 weeks, because the likelihood of detecting the Omicron virus will be higher if we do whole genome sequencing in these as a priority, rather than doing whole genome sequencing on older cases. The other important element is that we need to support the Philippine Genome Center to expand its whole genome sequencing capacity so that we are better equipped to detect the entry of Omicron early enough, and we can initiate appropriate control measures and alert levels where we identify the variant to be present.
Dr. Rabi, I'll read some questions from our media partners. First from Lay Alvis of GMA News. Should the countries assume they already have the undetected cases of Omicron variant? In the case of Delta, it was determined later on that it was here as early as March, months prior the first detected case.
Well, it's always difficult to be very specific, and we should not assume that something is here. It needs to be confirmed by testing. That is why I'm advocating for testing. But assuming there is a risk and implementing risk-based approaches, increasing our preparedness and alert level capacities, that is what we need to do. I don't think we need to overreact. We just need to be very rational in our approach as we try to better understand this new variant. But as a fundamentally important component of living with COVID-19, we need to further strengthen our capacity for preparedness and response in anticipation of its potential arrival in the country.
From Red Mendoza of Manila Times, with the WHO declaring Omicron as having the highest global risk, do you think the steps most countries did, such as border restrictions, were the most logical thing to do? This comes after South African leaders said that they were being punished for the discovery of the variant through travel restrictions.
Well, it's up to individual countries to take precautionary measures. WHO has always advocated a risk-based approach. So each country needs to consider the risks of potential importation from countries that are already confirming this variant and take appropriate measures while we try to determine the absolute epidemiological significance of the variant and its response to the preventive and treatment protocols that we have in country at the moment in the world. So this is sort of an interim measure right now, and we continue to urge countries to take a risk-based approach in assessing the likelihood of importation. But I want to reiterate again that that risk-based approach should not only target countries that have already confirmed the Omicron variant in travelers or in citizens. We need to be aware of the fact that many countries have limited capacity for whole genome sequencing, and that's why I'm advocating that any returning traveler from overseas should be sequenced at a priority so that we get a head start on being able to detect the arrival of the virus variant in the country, learning from our previous experiences with Delta, like you mentioned. So I think it's critically important that we take these measures now.
His next question is, with the looming threat of the Omicron variant, will the WHO agree to mandate coronavirus vaccinations to allow more people to be protected against the virus?
But WHO has always taken the stance that we are not mandating vaccines. People should be free to decide what's best for them. But we have strongly advocated that people, particularly people at risk, are prioritized and provided with vaccines. So because we know that the vaccines are life-saving, the vaccines are capable of protecting people from severe disease, particularly those who are elderly or who are comorbidity. So even as we congratulate the government on the implementation of the national vaccination days and on the progress in that effort, we continue to re-emphasize the importance of prioritizing and ensuring vaccine access to the elderly and the comorbid populations, particularly now that we are seeing the threat of Omicron in the world and the likelihood of its importation. And I want to reiterate that we still remain concerned that nearly 2.5 million elderly Filipinos have still not had even a single dose of COVID-19 vaccines. So we need to use this situation now and the evolving global situation to emphasize the importance of vaccination for the elderly and the comorbid populations, and to make sure that we protect as many of them as possible as early as possible. Thank you.
Last question of Red Mendoza. The Philippine government has already made the use of face shields voluntary in areas under alert levels 1 to 3. Many Filipinos have been averse on using the face shields, as some experts claim that it does not really protect a person against COVID-19. What does the WHO think about adding increased protection such as face shields?
WHO has right along said that this is a virus that is not airborne, right? It's close contact transmission. And that is why we emphasize that what is important is the physical distancing and the face masking and the hand hygiene. If we can ensure that those minimum requirements, that those minimum public health measures are complied with, if we can ensure that people don't congregate in closed settings, the requirement for face shields probably at this point of time is not mandatory, because as I said, we are still looking at understanding the transmission dynamics of the Omicron variant. So I think it will be premature now to go there and say we need to reintroduce face shields, because we also know that there is significant public discontent on the mandatory use of face shields. So it's better to get public compliance with the measures that are there and take a risk-based approach to reanalyze whether we need to go into the use of face shields or not.
Yes, Dr. Rabi, may we also know your reaction to the ongoing 3-day nationwide vaccination drive of the government? Should this be replicated in the coming months?
Thank you. We have right along been advocating and supporting the government in this effort. WHO and many of our staff and our partner organizations, include UNICEF, are working hand in hand on the ground with the LGUs, with the national governments, with the CHDs to ensure the success of this national vaccination drive. It's important because we are in a scenario that we now have potential circulation of Omicron globally, and even besides that, we are ahead of the Christmas season, when we know that there could be a lot of gatherings and arrivals from abroad. So it is an opportunity for us now that we have a lot of vaccines in country to ensure that those most vulnerable are protected. So we support the national vaccination drive. We are encouraged by the success on the first day, but we still note with concern that in many places there was overcrowding in the vaccination centers. We need to try to minimize this, so we need better crowd control in those places. We need more capacity to vaccinate people. We also note that in many places we have heard of there being no priority lanes for the elderly and the comorbid populations. We need to try to do this because the maximum impact and benefit of the vaccination is if we can provide access to the vaccines to these groups of people. The other comment that I would like to make is we would like to see and commend those LGUs that have set up mobile vaccination teams to reach the elderly and the disabled. If we can replicate that in those LGUs that have not done so, this would significantly increase access to vaccines for these groups and increase the effectiveness of the national vaccination days. So overall, WHO is fully supportive of the NVD campaign. We are talking with the Department of Health already of a potential replication of the NVDs again within the month of December. I'm not sure which dates will be decided on, but preferably before the holiday season. We need to see whether we can maximize the protection among the population, as we did with the potential arrival of the Delta variant when we increased vaccination in the NCR. Now, with the potential threat posed by Omicron, we need to do the same at a national level, and these NVDs will be a great opportunity for us to increase access to protection for the Filipinos now that we have enough vaccines in the country, and WHO through COVAX continues to provide large quantities of vaccines to the Philippines. We just completed 5 million doses delivery over the weekend through dose sharing mechanisms from the United Kingdom. We are looking at another 1.6 million doses to be delivered tomorrow through dose sharing from France, and we are even looking at 9 million doses of J&J and 10 million doses of Moderna coming in the first weeks of December. So all of this effort is meant to protect as many Filipinos as possible, and so we would urge the LGUs to take the leadership and make the arrangements so that more Filipinos can access vaccines both during the NVDs and between the NVDs, so that we protect as many of them as possible and minimize the wastage of vaccines that are already in country. Thank you.
Dr. Rabi, thank you very much for joining us this morning. WHO representative to the Philippines, Dr. Rabi Abingasinge. Stay safe. Doc.
Thank you.
Samantala, mga small business owners naman sa lalawigan ng Romblon ang binisita at hinatira ng tulong ng tanggapan ni Senator Bongo. Kasama po ang DTI, TESDA at DSWD. Narito ang report.
Todo ang suporta ni Senator Bongo sa mga maliliit na negosyante o yung mga nasa micro-business sa bansa. Dahil sila ang labis na tinamaan ng epekto ng COVID-19 pandemic, tuloy-tuloy ang pag-agapay ng kanyang tanggapan para makabangon ang mga nasa micro-business at entrepreneurs. Sa pagbisita ng kanyang outreach team sa Romblon kamakailan, kasama ang mga ahensya ng pamahalaan, kapit-bisig ang lahat sa pagtulong. Kailangan na niyang suportahan ng gobyerno ang kapakanan ng mga maliliit na negosyante para buhayin ang mga negosyo at maiahon ang mga empleyado mula sa krisis.
Sa ngayon po, binabalanse ng gobyerno ang pagbubukas ng ekonomiya. Pero syempre po, uunahin natin ang kalusugan at buhay ng bawat Pilipino. Kaya magpabakuna na ho kayo. Magtiwala ho kayo sa bakuna. Ang bakuna po ang tanging susi o solusyon para makabalik na po tayo sa dati nating pamumuhay.
Bukod sa mga pagkain, mask, tablets at sapatos na pinamigay ng tanggapan ni Ko sa halos 1,000 maliliit na negosyante sa 11 bayan sa Romblon sa loob ng 3 araw, may hiwalay na tulong din mula sa Sustainable Livelihood Program ng DSWD ang mga benepisyaryo. Ganon din ang DTI at TESDA nag-alok ng scholarship grant at livelihood package sa mga kwalipikadong benepisyaryo.
Senator Bongo, maraming salamat po sa inyo sa binigay niyo sa amin na puhunan namin na sana makabangon din kami kahit papaano.
Sa ngayon gagamitin ko po sa pag-alaga ko ng baboy para makaahon po sa kahirapan ko. Sa matanggap po ngayon na pira, maraming salamat sa kanya, kay Senator Bongo po.
Gagamitin po namin doon sa pandagdag sa aming tindahan na maliit para sa restaurant. Maraming salamat po kay Ginoong Senator Bongo.
Hinimok ni Go ang mga taga Romblon na lumapit sa Malasakit Center na nasa Romblon Provincial Hospital sa Odjongan kapag kailangan nila ng pantustos sa gastusin sa ospital o pagpapagamot.
Pakiusap lang ho namin ni Pangulong Duterte, magpabakuna na po kayo, mas protektado po kayo. Nasa datos po, pag bakunado kayo, mas maiwasan ang pagkagrabe o pagkamatay po dulot ng COVID-19. Magtulungan lang po tayo, magmalasakit po tayo sa ating kapwa Pilipino.
Isang magandang balita ang inaalok ng Government Service Insurance System o GSIS sa mga miyembro nito. Para po alamin kung ano yan, nakakausap po natin si Ms. Vilma Fuentes, ang Vice President ng Mindanao Office mula sa Vismin Operations Group ng GSIS. Magandang umaga po, Ms. Vilma.
Magandang umaga, Yusek Rocky, at magandang umaga sa lahat ng nanonood ng PTV4 ngayon.
Opo, Ms. Vilma, ano po ba itong GSIS Enhanced Pension Loan?
Ang GSIS Enhanced Pension Loan ay ang dating GSIS Pension Loan na pinaganda ang features upang mas matugunan ang pinansyal na pangangailangan ng old age pensioners natin.
Opo, pero ano po yung credit limit ng GSIS Enhanced Pension Loan?
Yusek Rocky, itinaas na namin ang credit limit para rito mula 100,000 hanggang 500,000. Kasi dati, ang maximum limit namin is only 100,000. So ngayon, pinataas ito hanggang 500,000 kahit 65 years old o higit pa ang kanilang edad. Maaari nang humiram ang lahat ng qualified old age pensioners ng halagang katumbas hanggang 6 or 6 times their basic monthly pension. Ngunit hindi lalagpas ng 500,000.
Opo, pero ano po yung interest rate ng GSIS Enhanced Pension Loan, Ms. Vilma?
Ang GSIS Enhanced Pension Loan ay may interest rate na 10% per annum.
Opo, at ilang taon daw po babayaran ng GSIS Enhanced Pension Loan, ma'am?
Ang loan na ito, Yusek Rocky, ay payable ng 24 equal monthly installments. Siyempre, to be deducted from their monthly pension.
Opo, ito po yung mga tanong, sino na daw po ang pwede mag-avail ng GSIS Enhanced Pension Loan?
Maaari mag-apply sa enhanced pension loan ang lahat ng old age pensioners natin na tumatanggap na ng kanilang pensyon ng may 1 buwan na o higit pa at walang outstanding loans na binabayaran sa ilalim ng Choice of Loan Amortization Schedule for Pensioners or CLASP. Kasi Yusek Rocky, pag nag-retire ang ating mga members sa GSIS at may utang pa, we offer them the Choice of Loan Amortization Schedule for Pensioners na pwede rin nilang bayaran in 2 to 3 years. Pag meron kang existing class, hindi pa kayo qualified mag-avail ng pension loan. So, ang GSIS Program for Restructuring and Repayment of Debts naman, o PRRD, sa pitsa ng pag-apply, dapat wala rin sila doon. By the time na mag-apply sila, dapat wala silang class at wala silang PRRD.
Opo.
At walang outstanding pension loan. In 24 months, pag nabayaran na nila, pwede ulit sila mag-renew.
Opo. So,
may resultang net monthly pension na hindi bababa sa 25% ng kanilang basic monthly pension pagkatapos ibawas ang kanilang loans. Kasi syempre, Yusek Rocky, kailangan may net pension pa rin ang ating pensioners kahit may umuutang sila sa GSIS.
Opo, at paano naman daw po makakapag-apply nitong GSIS Enhanced Pension Loan?
Pwede mag-apply over the counter ang ating mga pensioner or through the drop boxes in GSIS offices nationwide. Pwede rin silang online using eGSIS mo. or via email to the handling branch. Kasi sa website ng GSIS, makikita niyo naman yung aming mga ang directory at kung anong email address ng ating handling branches. And or pwede sila mag-apply through the GWAPs or kiosks. At sa susunod na taon, Music Rocker, early in 2022, i-roll out na rin namin yung mobile app or GSIS GTAS or GSIS Touch na pwede na rin mag-apply doon ng ating mga pensioners ng pension loan.
Opo. At kung may mga katanungan po o nais na karagdagang impormasyon, ano daw po yung maaari nilang gawin, Ms. Vilma?
Bisitahin ang www.gsis.gov.ph o GSIS Facebook page at gsis.ph or mag-email sa gsis.cares@gsis.gov.ph or pwede silang tumawag sa 8847-4747 sa yung mga taga Metro Manila or 1-800-8847-47 para sa Globe at TM subscribers at 1-800-10847-4747 para sa ating mga Smart, Sun at Talk and Text subscriber. Ang listahan ng mga email addresses ay pinakamalapit na branch offices ay makikita rin sa gsis.gov.ph na or sa aming website.
Po, maraming salamat po sa pagbabahagi ninyo ng impormasyon sa amin, Ms. Vilma Fuentes, ang Vice President ng Mindanao Office mula sa Vismen Operations Group ng GSIS. Salamat po.
Maraming salamat din, Music Rocky.
Samantala, alamin natin ang sitwasyon sa ikalawang araw ng Bayanihan Bakunahan National Vaccination Drive. Dagsa pa rin kaya ang mga tao sa vaccination centers nasa Malolos, Bulacan. Si Patrick De Jesus para sa update. Patrick?
Yes, Yusek Rocky, dito sa probinsya ng Bulacan, nagtungo ngayong araw si Vaccine Czar, Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr., kaugnay ng ikalawang araw ng National Vaccination Days. Ininspeksyon ni Galvez ang ilang vaccination sites sa lalawigan upang tingnan ang sitwasyon sa ginagawang bakunahan. Napansin niya na marami ang nagpunta, bagay na kanyang ikinatuwa dahil nagpapakita lamang kanya ito na mainit ang pagtanggap ng marami sa bayanihan bakunahan na inilunsad ng pamahalaan. Sa unang araw ng National Vaccination Days kahapon, 297,000 doses ang na-deploy sa buong Region 3 ayon sa DOH Central Luzon, malapit sa kanilang target na higit 300,000. Kahapon naman, iniulat ni Galvez na 2.4 million doses ang na-administer sa buong bansa. Malapit ito sa 3 million doses daily target sa tatlong araw na National Vaccination Days. Umaasa si Galvez na tataas pa yung bilang ng mga mababakunahan sa natitirang dalawang araw kung saan 9 million ang kabuang target sa National Vaccination Days. At yan ang pinakauling ulat mula rito sa probinsya ng Bulacan. Balik sa iyo, Yusek Rafi.
Maraming salamat sa iyo, Patrick De Jesus. Isa sa nakikitang paraan para mapalakas ang antas ng pagbabakuna sa bansa ay ang insentibo. Kaya ipinanukala na mabigyan ng insentibo lalo na mahihirap kapag nagpabakuna dahil batay sa record ng DSWD, wala pang 20% ng mga pinakamahihirap sa bansa ang bakunado. Narito ang report.
Muling umapila si Senate Committee on Health Chairperson Christopher Bongo sa pamahalaan na magbigay ng insentibo para tumaas ang vaccination rate sa bansa.
Sa paraan ito, nainganyo na natin silang magpabakuna, nabigyan pa natin sila ng dagdag na tulong. Bagamat walang pilitan, wala rin naman tayong tigil na hikayatin sila dahil bakuna ang tanging susi at solusyon tungo sa pagbalik sa normal na pamumuhay. Napapansin po natin sa nakaraang linggo, bumababa po ang kaso, ngunit hindi ibig sabihin maging kumpiyansa tayo. Kailangan po balansehin ng gobyerno, ekonomiya at kalusugan po. Ngunit importante po sa amin ni Pangulong Duterte ang kalusugan at buhay ng bawat Pilipino. Kaya mag-ingat po tayo. Pansin nyo naman po na pagbakunado kayo, mas maluwang po ang mga restriction sa inyo. Mga kababayan ko, at kaya po ini-encourage namin, hinihikayat po natin ang ating mga kababayan na magpabakuna na po kayo para po protektado ang bawat isa sa ating lahat.